Hi, coaches. I'm really excited to be joined today by my coach, Steve Chandler. This is one of the series of interviews I'm going to be doing with coaches to explain and hopefully get some real golden value out of around how they coach, what they see in coaches, and something that can really help all of us to be more prosperous and share the principles in a way that helps people but also makes us money as well. So, welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Ankush. It's really a privilege. I'm flattered that you're talking to me today.
I think the privilege is mine and all of ours. And before we start, I want to kind of give a bit of an introduction about who you are for me for the listeners. Steve, you've been my coach for the last year, I believe. It's coming up to a year now, and I had a lot of training in the three principles. I had experienced massive shifts, and I knew that I wanted something else. I wanted a coach to help me specifically with the business side of this whole coaching profession, this whole industry. And I was really struggling at the time with working out what worked and what didn't. And I was taking a load of action, and and I know we spoke, and then we there was a bit of a gap, but I kind of really took my time to work out who I wanted to work with, and it became very very clear that you were the right person, and you've had such an extraordinary impact, not only on my business and me making money, but you've had an extraordinary impact on so many areas of my life, and I'm very very grateful and really happy that we're still working together.
Thank you.
Um, so one thing I thought would be cool to start off with, because this is a recording for a coaching group specifically for Three Principles coaches, and something that I didn't know about you early on was your involvement with the Three Principles, and you've had some coaching around the principles with some fairly well known coaches. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, many years ago, I became a George Pransky fan. And the reason I became a huge fan and follower of George was because Colin Wilson, the British philosopher, had written in one of his books that George Pransky was the greatest psychologist of our time. And I had no idea who he was. And I thought, wow, because Colin Wilson had been my hero. He's written over 60 books, and he's just an amazing genius. And my whole owner victim teaching and reinventing yourself book came out of Colin Wilson's philosophies and how I just lived with Colin Wilson for years. So if Colin Wilson is going to say that George Pransky is the greatest psychologist of our age, then I want to find out who he is. So I tracked him down. I found out, and at that time, years and years ago, he was not very well known, and he doesn't even try to be well known now. He's very much under the radar. But I got his Renaissance of Psychology book, which is hard to get because it's out of print. He doesn't want it to be in print. I studied that. I got the relationship handbook, and then I got a flood of CDs that he'd made for businesses and personal. And I drove around listening to George Pransky for about half a year. And it completely changed my life, his whole approach. It was the three principles, but in what I was reading, he didn't mention the three principles very often. He just lived them for me. And the way he was describing things about mood and state of mind, I got it right away and I loved it. So if you fast forward a bit, there was a period of time when Michael Neal and I were working together, and he had hired me. And Michael tells this story publicly, so I'm not sharing anything privileged. But he was having relationship problems, and whenever I can as a coach, I like to point people in the direction of something that might help them. And so I said, Michael, I'm going to send you a book called The Relationship Handbook by George Pransky. I want you to read it, and then we'll talk about your relationship problems in our next coaching session. But read the book first. So we had our next session 2 weeks later, and I said, "Now tell me about how your relationship is going now." And he said, "I'm trying to remember what the problems were." And I said, "Did you read the book?" And he said, "Oh man, that was one of the best books I've ever read. And I don't have a relationship problem right now. It was all about mood. It wasn't about the relationship." And I was just laughing because so that was my initial exposure. After a while, I began to get more and more curious. So I watched Three Principles videos all the time, and Mara Gleason, everybody on there that I could find, and I really was drawn to Dick and Bettinger in his videos. So I hired him, and he mentored me for about a year, Skype sessions. He calls it mentoring, and it's coaching, and so that was really great training for me, and really getting grounded, and really having just a real simple understanding and a useful understanding of the three principles. So that sort of brings you up to date. That's a pretty long answer, wasn't it?
No, but I think it's great because I know I'd listened to so many of your audios, and I know you're so free with giving out a number of resources of yours, and I hadn't known that about you. I think until we spoke, I didn't know that you'd had some involvement with the three principles, because for me, I really wanted someone who had at least some understanding of the kind of coaching that I did. So that's really helpful, because I'm sure there are other people that are watching this or listening to it who wouldn't be aware of that. And just in case someone has been living on another planet, because I'm guessing most people in this coaching world know of you generally, could you give kind of like a short background in terms of who you are in the coaching world and what you do? And again, in particular, what I'm really interested in drawing out is you don't just work with coaches. That's just one area of your business. You've worked a lot in business and with Fortune 500 companies, for example.
Yeah, coaches are about 10% of my coaching business. I love working with coaches and helping them, especially in the area of money and getting clients, because a lot of coaches have a real weak spot in that area, and it's understandable because the profession is so new, it's unregulated, there are no real standards for fees or anything, which is all good. It's all very open and artistic and creative, but it also causes panic with people who are brand new coaches. They have to find their own way. They have to create their own professional standards, and that's difficult for a lot of people at the start. But as they start to move through it, it gets easier. So I coach all kinds of people, coach corporation leaders and actors, and really my slogan, the spiritual slogan I wake up to every morning is anyone with money.
So, I know you use a lot of humor in your coaching and a lot of stuff of what you do, but that's a great point to pick up on. Is so I've heard some coaches say, don't coach anyone with just money. Have a real high standard for the people that you work with. How do you balance those two, or do you not think about that at all?
Well, that is my high standard for people I work with, is whether they have the money to afford me. That's how I judge their character. And but I agree with people coaches who say don't just do it for the money, because there are some clients who are not really very open to coaching. They make it more difficult for the coach than it really ought to be or has to be. And because this is coaching, we're not Mother Teresa, and we're not psychotherapists who have a kind of moral obligation to stay with a person in psychotherapy if they're really hurting. This is coaching. This is mentoring. And we can choose our clients because of that. And that's a good thing, because if you're not enjoying coaching someone, then they're not getting full benefit from you, and it's not a great relationship. So I would agree with people who say, have your own standards for who you coach.
And you mentioned kind of psychotherapy there, and I know you've got a great audio on this, but again, what's your view on the difference between coaching and therapy? Because I know the principles are used in lots of areas. Coaching is just one area that people use the three principles, and historically it had been used in therapy. But what's your understanding of the difference between the two?
Well, I've I've had a great relationship with psychotherapists over the years. Dr. Nathaniel Brandon was he was my therapist for a while, and I really enjoyed working with him. Um, and so I love really great psychotherapy. It's terrific, and coaching is different. Coaching's a little more wide open, and coaching comes from the world of sports and the arts, and it's more helping people achieve what they want to achieve. It isn't it isn't so much like psychotherapy where we're going to get to the bottom of your emotions. Although a really skilled coach will include that. That's why three principles coaches have a depth to them. They have a capacity that most other coaches don't have, and that is to bring a lot of the elements of psychotherapy, because that's where it came. George Pransky was a counselor, a therapist, and so many of the elements of really good psychotherapy are in there, in the three principles. Boy, I'm not admiring my answers here, Ankush. They feel like they're going all over the place, um, but I'll just hang in there.
No, it's really good. I'm enjoying this interview. One thing that I know that I heard you speak about before was you felt that therapy was more about the past, and I've shared this with people, whereas coaching's more about the future. And
Right.
for me,
Yeah.
I don't know what you think about this, but for me, where I felt the three principles was in a kind of a unique position, is the three principles points us ruthlessly to the present moment. And
Right.
so from the present moment, you can choose a therapeutic approach and help people deal with things in their past by not taking them there, by helping them in the present. And also you can coach people, in my opinion, by creating, you call about having a created future, so making sure that their future is different, again by pointing to the present. I don't know if you agree with that or what your thoughts are on that, but that was helpful for me.
So absolutely, yeah. The short answer is that therapy is about the past, coaching is about creating the future through the present moment, because the future gets created right now in the present moment. It's not about worrying about the future. It's not about excessive planning for the future, because that creates tremendous anxiety. But it's about creating your future through the present moment. That's great coaching.
Yeah, that was really helpful to me to see that was the job of us as coaches. Again, something that I see, and it's been informed a lot by you, Steve, is that the three principles and coaching are in my mind, they're two different things. So I see coaching as helping people create an outcome, have something be different. That's what coaching is. And three principles is kind of the modality with which we do that. And I know you work with lots of different coaches. And do you see this as coaching is just what we do, and then different coaches use different things, different modalities to get people to wherever they want to get to?
Yes, absolutely. And people who are really versed and have deep, good, clear understanding of the three principles um, have an ability to coach people that is very powerful. It's very it changes people very quickly, and so it is um, it's a way of being, a way of listening, and a way of understanding the mind that helps you coach right away. Many other coaches who don't have three principles background, um, they get very confused about how to coach people, and they think, should I be a simple accountability coach? Should I establish the person's goal and then hold them accountable for taking the steps necessary to reach the goal. And a lot of coaches, that's all they do. They just do that. But the problem with that is that person may achieve that goal, but they find out, much to their dismay and chagrin, that they're the same person once they've achieved the goal. They have the same miserable outlook on life, the same sense of discouragement, and the same feeling that life's not working for them, even though they achieved their goal. So three principles have a real advantage. One of the disadvantages is that with a lot of the three principles coaches I've worked with, is there's confusion around whether this wonderful understanding I now have, whether I should charge money for it, or why should I charge money? Shouldn't I just wear a white robe and sandals and walk the earth sharing what I know? And you'll notice that people like Dick and Bettinger and George Pransky, they charge money all the time, left and right, up and down. Every day you look, here's a new thing that they're charging money for. I get things from George and Linda. Hey, here's another way you can pay us money. Here's another way you can pay us money. And that's fine. That's beautiful, because they understand that when you invest money, you're even more committed to opening your mind and getting it. So it benefits the people who pay money. But a lot of three principles coaches have a hard time getting there.
Well, you're someone I know who kind of lives that, in terms of, despite kind of being in the coaching world and very successful for a few decades, I believe, you constantly are investing in yourself, constantly investing in coaching and different ideas, and keeping yourself, I guess, fresh and up to date. And I know it's something that you, again, I'm putting words in your mouth, but you believe is very important for coaches.
Absolutely. It keeps them growing and evolving, keeps them on the learning curve constantly. And that sense of a growth mindset and a learning curve and perpetual evolution for greater mastery of the coaching process, clients feel that. And clients want to be in the presence of an evolving coach. They don't want to be in the presence of someone who already knows everything. That's not what they want. That's not exciting. When you ever meet anybody who already knows everything, they are not fun to be with. But when you meet a learning person who's on the learning curve, the growth continuum, that's a fun person to be with.
So would you say it's essential, or would you say it's necessary for anyone who's a coach to have a coach, or can you go and do this on your own?
Well, I've never known financially successful coach who has not had extensive coaching. I've never seen it happen. And so therefore, I would say that the evidence is that it's very, very beneficial, and it helps you financially. So one thing I would recommend, if you're a coach and you get a coach, is that you make sure that your investment has a return on it. That if you're secretly hoping that investing in coaching will pay off for you, tell your coach that, and let your coach participate in having it pay off for you. Because a lot of times people will hire a coach and then just get very timid, and will just go wherever the coach wants to go in the conversation, and they don't. And instead of standing up and saying, "Listen, I'm going to hire you, but I want our work together to result in my coaching practice being prosperous. If you can't help me with that, I'll find a different coach."
So one of the questions we've had in the group, and the group's fairly new, but one of the most interesting conversations we had, and the one that was most commented on, was a question about pyramid schemes. And I know this is something that's talked about in coaching circles, and people see coaches who are charging a lot of money and getting coached. And I know I had the thought a few years ago that, is this all just a big pyramid scheme? And I know other people have said it to me. I've got my view, but I'm really interested in your view on that.
Well, those are people who have not thought it through. So doctors go to medical school, and they learn in medical school from other doctors how to be a doctor. Is that a pyramid scheme? Would you rather they learn from bureaucrats and academics how to be a doctor? I want them to learn from doctors how to be a doctor. In the old days, the artisans and craftsmen would be apprentices, and everyone would learn their profession from someone else in the profession. And so that's how coaching evolves, because there's no real law school or medical school equivalent for coaches. Even though they have a few certification programs here and there, they don't prepare coaches to make a good living as a coach at all. And so, so it doesn't make any sense to call this a pyramid scheme. The other thing is, nobody pays for coaching unless the coaching really helps them. Why? It, if it were a simple pyramid scheme, it would have collapsed years and years ago, because people weren't getting help. But what's happening instead of that is it's growing and growing and growing, and more people are paying to be coached, and that can only happen if it's beneficial, if it's really working. That can't happen out of some kind of deception. So when you see coaches coaching other coaches, that makes sense. That's how other coaches learn. You know, Rich Liffin came to my coaching school 4 times. Now that's even beyond pyramid scheme. That's like, what did I do? Addict him or put him under my you know, but the reason was his income jumped every time he came in. He got more about how to get clients every time he came in. So the payoff was far greater than the investment. So the idea that it's a pyramid scheme, that's a cynical, fear-based evaluation from people outside the system who've never really experienced what it's like to be coached by a great coach. So they judge it, they're afraid of it, they're worried about it. It's very fear-based to label it that way. And I've never heard anyone label it that way who really understood or had some experience of being inside this system where coaches coach coaches. It would be like a doctor saying, I would never go to a doctor. That's a pyramid scheme. The fact that that I'm a doctor and there are other doctors, and then if I have an infected gallbladder, for me to go to a doctor, that's a pyramid scheme. That's not a pyramid scheme. It makes sense.
So you talked about coaches hiring other coaches. What, in your view, makes is a good coach for a particular person? So if someone's going through that process, someone's listening to this and saying, I would like to hire a coach, or I'm considering hiring a coach, because this is something that I think is less talked about. I hear people talk about hiring coaches and it's good for us, but I was very, very careful in choosing a coach for me, and I'm wondering what thoughts you have around what decisions people should make, or how they should make that decision around hiring a coach.
Well, absolutely. Never do it on faith, and trust no one. Trust no one in this profession or any other profession. A doctor tells you you have terminal cancer. I say that's your opinion. I want to talk to another doctor. So, and that's just being responsible. That's not being skeptical or overly cynical. So trust no one. Do it on experience. So let's use the metaphor of a golf pro, a golf coach. Let's say you want your golf game to be better, so you go take a lesson from the pro at the country club. And the person gives you a lesson, and then you go play golf for a few weeks, and your golf game is much better. Now you decide, hey, this guy's good. And then you go back and you say, I'm now going to sign up for 10 more lessons from you. And he says, fine. Now that nothing in there had anything to do with faith or trust. So the same is true when you hire a coach. Do not have any of it be on faith or trust or talking to other. I mean, you can talk to other people who've been coached by the person, but have it be your absolute knowledge that the person can help you. Only do it that way. So let's say, Ankush, I'm thinking of hiring you as a coach. What I would do is say, will you be willing to give me some time so I can experience you?
Mm.
And I know you well enough that if you think I'm a valid candidate to be a client of yours, not just anybody, that you will say, let's set aside some time to talk. And sometimes that'll be an hour, sometimes you'll even give me another hour after that. Now, I'm going to base hiring you on what occurs in my life because of the hours I spent with you, or the hour I spent with you. If nothing shifts, if my life is not different, if you've made no difference with me, why would I hire you? That would, on trust, on faith. So what I would tell coaches is never hire a coach on faith or trust. But I would also tell them, if you are sincere about having a prosperous career as a coach, the best thing you can do is get a coach and let them guide you in that direction.
It's really powerful what you said, and what I was thinking is it really talks to how we show up as coaches with our clients or prospective clients as well. It works both ways. That no one's going to hire us because they trust us or because they like us or we've got a nice website or something like that. And something that I believe in is that, again, someone's got to experience me for them to hire me, and vice versa. I would like to experience someone else to see, are they coachable? Is it going to be a fruitful relationship for both of us? Should it for us to work together? Now, I know some coaches are taught in certain areas not to give away sessions, or and I know you've got a certain view on the way that's done. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, that's a very bitter, clingy, paranoid approach, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I think you know me well enough, Ankush, that I never judge others. But that is a bitter, paranoid, clingy approach to say never give your time away, and that's fear-based. And any profession that you enter into with a fear-based system, you will not thrive. There won't be openness and love and enthusiasm. I was talking to Dickon Bettinger about how he had acquired some of his really great corporate clients, and he goes into organizations and teaches business leaders as well as individuals. And he talked about one of his best clients ever he had talked to for 1 full year before the person hired him. A full year. And the bitter, clingy paranoids who say never give your time away, if Dickon had listened to them, he wouldn't have had this wonderful, wonderful, lucrative client relationship.
So how do you balance that, giving that time away, with just giving all your time away for free?
Well, I want to be wise about it. I want to allow my inner wisdom to apply. I don't want to do it blindly or mindlessly. I want to be mindful. I want to realize the best service I can be to anyone is to have them be a paid client of mine. That to serve the world, that's my best service, my best level of service. Just like if you were a brain surgeon, that sounds self-serving, but it's not. If you're a brain surgeon, your best service is operating on someone's brain. That's your best level of service. That's also what you get paid the most for. And those two go hand in hand. So if someone hires me and pays me, they're coming in at a higher level of consciousness. Their mind is more open, and their lives can shift to a greater degree in the hour they spend with me than if we're just chatting like that. So I want to keep that in mind. I'm not just giving my time away all day long. I want to make sure that I'm creating a relationship here that makes sense for the building of my practice. And even if this person doesn't work with me, I'm very happy that I provided value for them and I made a difference for them, even if they don't end up working with me. But I don't just do that willy-nilly with everyone I see. I want to use my wisdom. Is this a good prospect? Is this someone who's got a good likelihood of being a client of mine?